So on January 21st, 5 million of us came together to raise our voices in unity at the Women's March around the globe. That was just the beginning.
I changed mics.
We have all spent the past 100 days proving the power of our collective voice, from the no ban, no wall actions at airports around the country, to a day without a woman, the tax march, the science march, People's Climate March, and going beyond the moment on May Day. That was just the first 100 days. Today we recommit ourselves to resistance work and to each other. We cannot pledge our allegiance to an administration that actively oppresses and harms us. We pledge our allegiance to the collective liberation of all of our communities. We marched on January 21st for all of these values. We call on all members of Congress to uphold these principles in their daily legislative actions. They are the principles in which our resistance movement is rooted. This is our pledge of liberation to each other. So we believe that all issues are women's issues, from racial justice, environmental justice, to disability rights, to indigenous sovereignty. Nothing demonstrates this more than the devastating impact of the license to discriminate executive action and the House vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act on women and femmes of all background nationwide. For 100 days, this administration and leaders of Congress have used tactics to try and overwhelm us by enacting harmful and destructive executive orders and legislation in rapid, overlapping bursts. They mean to divide us into groups with conflicting priorities, but we will not let that happen. Our resistance movements are more focused than ever. We know these issues are all interrelated. The attacks on queer and trans people, on disabled people, on black, brown, and indigenous people, on immigrants, on poor people, on Muslim and Jewish people, the attacks on health care and the environment, the rendering of violence against women as a pre-existing condition. These are all an assault on our fundamental rights to live with dignity, autonomy, and liberty.
That's right. Yeah.
Today, as legislators return to their home offices, they need to hear what we think about the House voting to legalize discrimination and making us all pre-existing conditions.
Yes.
And so today, the Women's March Network, along with the ACLU's People Power, Indivisible, United We Dream, Hollaback, National Lawyers Guild, Ultraviolet, the Gathering for Justice, and other national and local partners, reaffirm our commitment to each other and our shared liberation through action exactly 6 months after the election day. Has it really been that long? Oh my God, it seems like forever. So there are rallies and actions occurring in every state in the United States today, and we in Rhode Island are joining this action to say no to the AHCA. In solidarity with our family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and communities, we collectively stand for dignity, justice, and freedom in the face of attacks on our health care, our identities, and our lives. When one community is harmed, all of our communities are harmed. We are all part of one movement, and we pledge allegiance to the survival and liberation of all people. We unite with our Women's March national and state chapters from around the country and stand in solidarity for the protection of human rights. This is a national call to action. We recognize that our vibrant and diverse communities are the roots of tremendous strength of our country. We will give voice to communities that will be impacted by the AHCA, and we will stand together to ensure the rights of all humans, regardless of their race, ethnicity, religion, immigration status, sexual orientation, gender expression, economic status, age, or disability. This is still America. There are a lot of people in this country, especially in our little state, who are willing to stand up and say, no, I do not believe or support the policies of this administration, and I will not stand by and remove people's health care access to fund a tax cut for the wealthiest in our country. I will stand by my neighbors, whatever their race, healthcare status, sexuality, or religion, and we will join in diversity and solidarity to show our presence in numbers too great to ignore. The Rhode Island chapter of the Women's March on Washington calls on all defenders of all human rights to join us to peacefully rally against hate and injustice and demand equity for all. And we encourage each of you to call both Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse's office and voice your concerns. Tell them to vote no against the AHCA. Thank you. So we're going to do an open mic for anyone who would like to come up and talk about how the AHCA might impact you or tell your story. Anybody who wants to speak is invited to just come up and take the mic.
When the AHCA Affordable Health Care Act was being heard and fought over throughout Congress, I crisscrossed the entire state of Rhode Island because I had a brain tumor and my job terminated me, which resulted in me losing my home. And nobody in America, no American should ever have to lose their house because they've had a pre-existing condition or they had a sudden illness like a brain tumor. So that's why I went crisscrossing the state, and I'm damned if I'm going to let Trump and his minions, evil minions, take away our health care. Who's next? It's not that hard.
Well, it's been several years of freezing out here on the steps. But I just want to say, I've seen Nancy speak, and I've seen my good friend, my passed away friend, Dave St. Germain, who was a great advocate for health care. And I wish he was still around to raise heck about it. But he was also a victim of a severe car accident, chronic pain, depression, and not enough help for that. So we've been here a long time. Seeing Nancy here makes me think that.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul, and I just want to say that I just came this very moment from a gathering over at the what's the name of this hotel over here? The Marriott. The Marriott that was organized by people who've been around for a long time and helped establish Planned Parenthood here in Rhode Island. I was invited there as a long-time volunteer escort at a number of women's clinics. And in the midst of all the atrocities, the indecencies, the obscenities that are being, in light of all the obscenities and indecencies that we're having to confront in these days, there is every now and then something celebratory. And I want to call to attention for those who don't know that this very day, and the reason we have this gathering over at the Marriott is to then proceed over to the brand new Planned Parenthood headquarters at the corner, right across from Crossroads, right along the access road, not a few hundred feet from where the old Boy Scout building used to be. That's the Rhode Island way, right? It's where the old Boy Scout building was. And it's a beautiful new facility. It has a parking area that is protected by locked gates, so that women and their friends who are seeking all kinds of reproductive and health services at the center will not be harassed by you know who. So I just want to say that, but at the same time, Dr. Pablo Rodriguez, who has been the lead physician at Planned Parenthood for many, many decades, and also Mr. Brown from the ACLU, and a number of other people were there to remind us that never has it looked so dark since Roe versus Wade in terms of the call to close down Planned Parenthood and deny women access to their lawful reproductive health is being normalized Okay, it was never normalized before. They were always seen as fringe people, as the other, but now it's become part of a normal kind of vocabulary, and we have to fight very hard not to let that happen. So let's all of us dedicate ourselves to continuing the struggle that women of all types, of all ages, races, whatever, that all women have the right to their reproductive health. Thank you.
Hi to everyone. I've heard it said, and I actually agree, that unfortunately I believe that there are members of Congress who, at their core, believe that if you can't afford it, you shouldn't have it. And that's not what I believe. I don't believe it's what any of you here believe, or what the greater of all of us, the majority of us, believe. And my youngest son, Henry, was born with a situation where he needs a new liver, and God willing, he will get one. But he needs health care, and Henry is not the only one. And Henry can't afford it himself, but I think that the greater of us believe that Henry should get it, and so should all of the Henrys. All of the Henrys. Right? So if we continue to raise our voices and continue to stay together, my Henry and all of our Henrys will get a new liver. Thank you for being here.
Rise up!
Rise up!
Yeah, I just retired from 50 years as a pediatric nurse. And over all of those 50 years, I have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of families come through with and without health insurance. I've seen families struggling with 2 and 3 jobs. One parent staying in while the other parent's going to work, being told that they were going to be fired because they didn't have any money or any time, and they also didn't have any health care. And as Henry's mother says, there are a lot of babies and young children and adults out there waiting with pre-existing conditions, and they shouldn't be denied care. I also say that health care is a basic human right. That every single person should have it. You can't, hospitals are not going to turn anybody away. But the whiplash is going to come when the hospital's budgets are cut because they're not getting the dollars that they need to pay for the services. And everybody in the hospital, I was at Mass General for 18 years, and it was already happening. Trying to renegotiate things, paying for the residents, paying for the teaching, paying for free health care, which should be available to everybody if you don't have it. So all I can do is pray and hope that everybody in the Senate, as they say they're going to rewrite this, that they will bring women to the table, which are not here now. There's just a lot of middle, elderly, white gentlemen with no women, and we do need women on that table. And I hope that they can see this, that we need health care for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I speak to you at this moment from a position both of extreme privilege as somebody who's covered by state employee health insurance and thus has among the least to fear of anyone standing here, but also as somebody who was born with a genetic condition, an autosomal dominant genetic condition, which means that if I were to have children, I would have a 50% chance of passing that on. Any child that I would have, all of my cousins, my parent, my mother, my uncle, my grandfather, we were born already pre-existing. We had no choice. We couldn't live healthier lives. And in a world in which reproductive health care is threatened, we would have no choice but to bear children with such condition who then could not get health care. This is not the world, this is not the lives that people think about, right? They think about people who maybe could have tried to make a little more money. They think about, choices, but not all health is about choices. For some of us, it's about simply being born.
I have one small thought. And that is, what is the function of government anyway? It's a way that we take care of our neighbors, and it's a way we take care of everyone. How can it be that we would not want to have health care for our neighbors, for everyone in need?
And so for the people that have just recently come in, we've got an open mic for anybody to come up and speak and share your story.
Hi there. My son was born with a pre-existing condition and had surgery when he was 4 months old to reshape his skull, 6-hour procedure. I happen to be a pediatric critical care nurse, and this was still a pretty big procedure, but we kind of poo-pooed it at my house. Just got a big old scar on his head. When he was 25 years old, he was crossing the Newport Bridge on Christmas Eve at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and a truck traveling 70 miles an hour crashed 3 lanes of traffic and hit him head on. I have a photograph of Will in the car after the roof had been taken off. Picture I didn't want to look at when he was in hospital, but I did. And what I saw on his face was absolute peace. He looked at the EMT, who's from the Newport Fire Department, who was talking to him, and from that moment, I knew that he was going to be okay. He broke pretty much every single bone in his body. He has permanent nerve damage. He had muscle damage as well. I'm blessed because I have exceptional health care, although I will never tell my employer that. His physical therapy lasted for 8 months, 4 times a week. His occupational therapy lasted 4 times a week, maybe not the whole 8 months. He continues to need care. At this point, his care is over $250,000. I'm grateful for the insurance that I have. This would have bankrupted probably my family, and we're not without resources, but we're not with those kind of resources. We are blessed with family and friends. And Will has made a decision to make the best of every single day that he has, and so I do as well. But what Donald Trump is trying to do with Mitch McConnell and his 12 apostles, 13 white men, old white men, cannot tell me what's going to happen with my uterus, or my body, or my children. So, are you listening, Donald? Because I'm coming, and you're not going to like it. I make a promise to make every day of your life miserable as long as I have breath in my body. So, every day, Jack Reed hears from me. We just go through the demographics. Let's get this out of the way. The same thing with Langevin. When I called his office, because, I can't say too much, but someone that I have taken care of in the past who is not able to speak was able to sing the Star-Spangled Banner. She can't speak, but she sang it. And I reminded Langevin that he has the best wheelchair and he has the best health care. And I expect exactly the same for every single patient that I care for and everyone in my family. Okay? Bless us all.
Rise up!
Hi, my name is Lisa Peterson, and I've spent the last 20 years in the behavioral health treatment community. In 2011, I was brought on board at one of our local community behavioral health centers who do yeoman's work on a shoestring budget. And I was specifically brought on board to implement a statewide system to allow uninsured Rhode Islanders access to acute care when their mental health and substance use disorders were at a critical point. And what I remember most from that time is a gentleman who was at a hospital emergency room. The hospital did not have a psychiatric unit, and he was on an involuntary certification because he was acutely suicidal and extreme risk to himself. And every day I came in and that gentleman was still sitting in the emergency room. He was there for the entirety of the 10 days that we are allowed to hold someone on an involuntary certification, and then he was discharged to the street. These are individuals who are sick and suffering and vulnerable, and now that we have coverage for so many in this state, they're able to get preventive care. They're able to stay on their medications. They're able to have recovery and lives. The state's in the midst of an opioid overdose epidemic, and we cannot afford to lose health care for individuals who have treatable illnesses, for whom recovery is possible, and who can become contributing members to our society if they can treat their illnesses. So I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm going to show up here for every action on 3 days notice or 10 weeks notice, and I'm going to overcome my introversion every single time to speak out against these attacks.
Thank you.
Literally, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Thank you.
I'm another nurse against the American Health, whatever they're calling it, Trump care.
Trump care. Call it what it is.
Trump doesn't care. And the part that really gets me is every single major medical organization is against the bill. Yep. The AARP is against the bill. There's absolutely nobody involved with medical care that thinks it's a good bill for medical care. So I don't really know who they consulted for it. I'm another nurse for single payer, because healthcare is a right. And most of my adult life I've worked with adults with developmental disabilities. And both in that sector, and also when you think of our elderly in nursing homes, the majority of that funding comes from Medicaid. And there's not a lot extra. They're not raking in huge profits. There's often not all the services they need. And I can't imagine if we went to a block grant Medicaid for the state, what would happen to all of those people? What are people going to do when their grandmother needs to go into a nursing home? I don't know if everybody's ever looked at how much private pay for a nursing home is, but it's beyond probably most people standing on these steps means. Which means that you have to go to Medicaid. So, universal health care.
If I take my hat off, I'm probably one of those white-haired, white guys. But I left my pink hat at home. I personally knitted. No. Anyway, I'm really here. I guess speaking as a very privileged person because my father was a doctor. So all the time I was growing up, I got great free health care because it was what was called professional privilege and so forth. I then went and lived in England for 35 years, where I again got amazing health care that I didn't have to pay for every month or belong, it was taken out of my taxes, basically. And that's what I think we need here. It's called universal health care, right? I'm not saying that Britain has the best health care system in the world. I have no idea where it is. But it's certainly a hell of a lot better than here. A friend of mine ended up in a mental hospital. That was all perfectly paid for by what's called the NHS, the National Health Service. There's nothing in that that says the word insurance. There's nothing in that that says private insurance. It's something that everyone gets, no matter what your size, race, color, etc., etc. And that's really what we need here. So truthfully, I'm hoping that it really gets screwed up. Because the only way we're really going to get a change, unless we all stand up and shout every day for it, is that it'll turn out to be an absolute disaster, and then they'll have to start from square one. So please, let's do everything we can for universal health care.
I'm just going to follow up on that. My name is Amy Greenwald. So I think that might work, the strategy that was proposed, but I have another idea in favor of universal health care, single payer, and that's the following. When I was at the Women's March in Washington, I heard from Michael Moore something I didn't know, which was that abortion was legalized in New York and California 2 years before Roe v. Wade. So in other words, there were 2 states that led the way, that showed America the way, that showed us what was the right thing to do. So here we are. Oh, and another thing. In Canada, where they also have universal health care, single payer, there was a particular province, Saskatchewan, which implemented it and showed the way for the rest of Canada. So what I think we can do to implement universal health care in this country is that, for example, Rhode Island could show America the way. And we have competition because Vermont and Colorado are also looking at it. But I think we should make it Rhode Island that is the leader here and shows everybody else the way to do it.
Let Rhode Island lead!
I was gonna speak, and my name's Aaron Regenberg. I'm a state rep here in Providence. I just wanted to briefly follow up on that. There is a single payer bill here in Rhode Island. I've been introducing it every year since I was elected, and it's going to have its hearing in House Finance coming up in the next few weeks. So there's a chance for us all to come and make our voices heard. There's going to be a row of insurance company lobbyists who are going to be signed up to speak and say how we can't do it. But if everyone here could come, that would be great. Damn. I'll get it to the organizers to send out. I also just wanted to briefly say the wonderful nurse mentioned that there are no healthcare organizations that are supportive of this legislation. And you said, who did they consult on this? And I think we know who they consulted. They consulted their billionaire benefactors. The truth is, this isn't a healthcare bill. This is a wealth transfer class warfare bill. We'll transfer over $1 trillion from 40% of working families and middle-class families in this country to the richest 2% of families in this country. Republican congressman last week said that no one in America dies because of lack of access to health care. We know that this legislation, if it were to pass and be signed in, not only will make millions of lives worse, not only will drive countless more families into bankruptcy because of health crises, not only will make Americans less healthy, more sick, it's also going to kill people. And the blood of those innocent Americans is going to be on the hands of the Republican Party, an organization that is at this point so extreme and so radical and so violent that they are willing to put millions of Americans' lives at risk in order to transfer wealth to their billionaire benefactors. The only way we can stop this is by standing up to fight. And as was said by Amy, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., we all need to join together to make sure that the people in this building, our state leaders, stand up to say that no one is going to lose health insurance here in Rhode Island. I don't know exactly the way we can do that, but we do know that one way is single payer for Rhode Island to lead. So we'll be on the lookout for that committee hearing. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.